Alrighty, we are now on to Unit 3 Energy Flow Concept 2. I'm just going to restart that. Alrighty, so we are now at Concept 2, ATP, or Adenosine Triphosphate, of Unit 3 Energy Flow. So this is all about connecting how we use our energy, how we take in our energy from our food and transition it into something that we can use to power all of our bodily processes. All right, so adenosine triphosphate. Yeah, it's a little bit of a wordy name for a molecule, but it stands for the molecule that we all know and love, we've all heard of at some point or another, ATP. So essentially, your body needs energy to run your cells. Just kind of makes sense. You're not going to go run a marathon unless you've properly fueled your body first. So one thing, important thing to note is that your body cannot directly use your food for energy. It's kind of like, I want you to think about our food as a check and our ATP as like our money. So if somebody pays you with a check, you can't just like take it to the store and use it to buy something. No, you're gonna have to take it to the bank first. You're gonna have to make a deposit, get cash out, whatever. So it's an indirect form of of creating energy. So the energy we can use is in the food that we eat, is stored in the chemical bonds that make up those molecules. So if we remember our macromolecules, carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, the ones that we eat, the energy is stored in those bonds. So to release this energy for your body to use, those bonds have to be broken. And once this energy is released, ATP carries it to be used for all of our cells' functions. So ATP is like our straight up cash, okay? And our food is like our check system. If you receive a check, you can't use it directly right away. You can't spend it right away. You have to take it to the bank and convert it into a usable form of currency that you can use to pay for stuff. So ATP carries and stores energy for our cells' functions. And it is the only molecule that directly powers our body. So yes, we eat our food, but those indirectly are used for energy. ATP is the molecule that directly powers everything. All right, so what is ATP? What is its structure? So ATP is made up of a molecule called adenine, and it is a nitrogen base. Just kind of memorize that, short, sweet, to the point, and it's going to be this structure over here. So this is a ring of carbon molecules, or carbon atoms, sorry. All right, and then over here we have our sugar ring. So the name of this sugar is called ribose, and it has, it's kind of like a pentagon shape, a little house shape. So that is ribose. And then over here we have 3 separate phosphate groups. And we say that they're held together with high energy bonds, and we're going to talk about that more in just a second. But basically, right here, this bond right here is very unstable, and so this is a very high energy bond, and they do not like being bonded here. So we say it's high energy because they really, really, really want to break apart, and so we actually get to use that property to our advantage. And so there are 3 of them. You can see 1, 2, and then 3. And remember, all the energy, the highest energy bond is located right in here. All right, so let's say you eat a really big breakfast one morning. You eat a breakfast with eggs, you have bacon, sausage, pancakes, waffles, whatever. You eat a lot, and you break that food down in order to create ATP. Okay, and so this is what we would have just created right here. So here we got our adenine, we got our ribose sugar, and then we have our 3 phosphates here. So we just broke down that food, just broke down all that breakfast, and we have now created energy that our body can directly use to fuel all of our processes. So we have this ATP molecule. Now, how do we actually get that energy? So what happens is we break this bond right here between the 2nd and the 3rd phosphate, and you can see this exiting here. We break that bond, and we are left with this molecule here with only 2 phosphate groups. And we call this molecule adenosine diphosphate. So we originally had ATP, adenosine triphosphate, tricycle, has 3 wheels. And we ended up with a molecule that only has 2, adenosine diphosphate. So we would abbreviate that with the phrase ADP. All right, and so this whole thing is a cycle. All right, so we just broke apart that bond. We broke down our meal. We broke this bond right here. We released this phosphate group, and that breaking of that bond is what creates that energy. So when that bond breaks, energy is used, and our body can use it to do whatever it needs to do. Okay, and so then it doesn't just stop there. So now it's lunchtime, and you eat some more, and your body will synthesize more ATP. So it'll add this third phosphate group back onto this molecule. It'll add that back on. It'll add it back onto that ADP, and then it'll just be broken apart again. So we can use the energy that breaking apart those bonds creates. It's a big cycle. So a lot of energy is stored in the bond between those last 2 phosphates, like I just said. And energy is released when a phosphate group is removed. So ADP is changed back into ATP when a phosphate group is added. And only the ADP molecule is what is recycled. So we can't just make ATP willy-nilly. We do have to have food. We have to have an input of checks, if you will, in order to actually spend that money. So here we have our label. We have ATP. Phosphate gets removed. Energy is released at this stage for all of our cell processes. And then now we were left with ADP, adenosine diphosphate, because there's only 2 phosphates here. And then, again, it's lunchtime. We eat some more, and then our body can synthesize more ATP. So we can add a phosphate group back onto that molecule, onto that ADP, and we can end up with ATP. And so this process is happening every single second of every single day in our bodies, and it's very important. If it stops happening, you die. So I would consider it a pretty important process for your body to be able to do. Okay, and this last one right here, energy is added from broken down food. So yeah, this is the step where we break down that food, energy is added, and it's stored in these bonds right here. It's stored in that bond between the second and the third phosphate. Okay, so let's summarize. When ATP is broken down, it releases energy for the cell to use and becomes ADP and a phosphate. So we break down ATP into an ADP plus a phosphate plus energy. So this is what it would look like in a chemical reaction equation. So we've just released energy. So because energy is given off, this is can you guess what kind of reaction it is? If you did guess, I feel like Dora the Explorer right now, then you were correct. It is an exothermic reaction because it is releasing heat, releasing energy. On the flip side, to make ATP, cells must join together ADP, I just got confused for a second. To make ATP on the flip side, cells have to join together ADP and a phosphate using the energy we get from food. So in a chemical reaction equation, we have ADP over here on the left. We are adding a phosphate, and then we are adding energy. We are using energy to create that ATP. And so because energy is being taken in, this is can you guess what kind of reaction it is? Wow, you're right. This is an endothermic reaction because energy is being absorbed or taken in. Yeah. All right. So, one last note. So ATP is formed in this way during cellular respiration, and we're going to learn more about that in Concept 5. So cellular respiration is an example of an endothermic reaction, and so yeah, we will learn more about this in Concept 5. Forgot. One last slide. So wait, Ms. Harrison, where does the energy come from again? Well, I'm glad you asked. So remember those carbon-based molecules in your food? Remember those macromolecules? I hope you do. So remember, carbohydrates, they're the most commonly broken down food for ATP. They're the first choice our body wants to use. We do not want to use anything else first. We want to use those carbohydrates. They are very good for short-term energy storage. Okay, so we can get about 36 ATPs from one glucose molecule. So say we get $1, we invest it in the stock market, we are guaranteed to get $36 back if we use our carbohydrate money. And if we recall from Unit 1, carbohydrates store about 4 calories per milligram. All right, lipids are fats. So those are the second thing that are going to be broken down. They're broken down after carbs, and so here's an example of a lipid. Lipids store 9 calories per milligram, so they can store a little bit more energy. They're good for long-term energy storage. So it's like when polar bears or bears, they stock up for the winter and then they hibernate. What they're doing is they store all of that energy in their fat, and then while they're sleeping, while they're hibernating during the winter, the long winter, their body is breaking down that long-term energy because they're not actually ingesting any more short-term energy anymore. They're not actively ingesting carbohydrates, so their body starts to dip into that energy store that they have in their lipid areas, in their fats that they have stored. And then last but not least, proteins, the least likely to be broken down for energy. You can get them when you scramble some eggs in the morning for breakfast. You're eating protein. But again, we don't want to use proteins for energy. We will if we have to, if you're stranded on an island like Tom Hanks in Castaway. But we do not want to use that because why? We want to use proteins to build our muscle up strong. Proteins have a lot of functions in the body. We just learned about enzymes. Proteins function as enzymes to catalyze all of our important reactions in our body. And so we definitely don't want to be using proteins for something when it has proteins for energy when it has so many other uses. Yeah, especially when there are 2 other options that can be used before proteins. And if you're wondering why nucleic acids are not up here, think about it for a second. Why would nucleic acids not be discussed when we're talking about getting energy from our food? Why wouldn't we be talking about that? Because we don't eat nucleic acids. Nucleic acids make up our DNA. So we do not ingest DNA, we do not ingest nucleic acids, we do not break them down for energy. They are used to, they are passed down actually from your parents. You get your DNA when you're born, from the very beginning of your life, when that sperm cell fertilizes the egg cell, creates that zygote, you already have your DNA. And so we'll go over that a little bit more in our Unit 2 review, and then when we get into genetics and we start talking about meiosis, it'll be a big thing that we are talking about. But yeah, we don't eat nucleic acids. Moral of the story. All right, I think that's it. Oh, of course, I always forgot one last thing. Proteins store about 4 calories per milligram, so about the same as carbohydrates. All right, that's this concept. Have a great day.